You're a bad guy.
For a long time, you know, I played those guys, and then you get too old, and so you slip into another category, lovable lunatic. Which,
you're good at both. To keep things lively, we're going to have one of the greatest character actors around. He works all of the time. You probably know him best as Marvin, the big band lover who helps Bruce Willis in Die Hard 2. He's done a lot of work in a lot of different genres. He does stage work, a lot, and he does film work, feature films and television shows. But what we're going to talk about today is the Ballad of Gregorio Cortez. This is a film that Tom BOWER was heavily involved with, a special movie that Edward James Olmos starred in, and the journey from idea through completion is an amazing journey, and the film itself is one of those that you've got to search out. It's a tough one to find. We're going to find out more about it right now from Tom BOWER.
Thank you, Rob, for having me, and it's great to see a bunch of people I haven't seen in a long time, a lot of old friends. What is it, Algonquin?
The Algonquin Cowboys is a name that your pal Rupert Hitzig came up with.
Oh, yeah.
Because we used to, after the Golden Boot Awards ended, everybody said, you got to have the Golden Boot Awards. And we didn't do it, so we started having lunches because Bo Hopkins said, let's have lunch every week.
Yeah.
And some of us said, we're still working, Bo. We can't do it every week. But let's do it on a regular basis. And Bo told such great stories that it was like the Algonquin Club in New York.
Yeah.
With the great storytellers, S.J. Perlman, and Harpo Marx was one of those, and Robert Benchley. And so we kind of branded ourselves as the Algonquin Cowboys. And now you're part of it, telling your stories. In fact, you and Jimmy Gammon came to one of our first ones when we held it at the Sportsman's Lodge. About, gosh, it's got to be 4.5 years ago.
Yeah, he's been gone for 5 years. So
boy, then it's got to be longer.
A little longer.
We've been having fun a long time, but boy, when Jimmy Gammon, one of the great character actors, also a good friend, came to that lunch, and he had been going through some tough times with cancer, and he was almost unrecognizable.
We had just finished doing Appaloosa, and it was shortly after filming Appaloosa that we came to that luncheon.
It was always great to see him, and I'm glad he came, but that's the last time I saw him.
But hearing some of the Mitchum stories, there's a guy, John Ashton, who probably many of you know. I think he's been to a couple of luncheons. And he was very close to Mitchum through his wife and his wife's family. So he tells about Bob going to Betty Ford Clinic, and he came back and people said, "Did it help you, Bob?" He says, "Yeah, I'm using ice cubes now."
Just to water it down a little bit, right?
And the other thing was he was asked, "What do you look for in a role?" He says, "Days off." I never got to work with him. I worked with John. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, you work all the time, too. I mean, how did you first get into this business? It's a crazy, nutty business.
I wanted to be a baseball player. After listening to this story about Gene and all the baseball players, that's what I thought I would do for the rest of my life. And woke up at 20 and realized that wasn't going to happen. So the backup was I backed into acting. But I quit for a while and became a private investigator.
Really?
And my first film was John Cassavetes' first film, Shadows. In New York, we did it in 1957. I quit shortly after that, and I became a private investigator. I did that for about 15 years. And I got cast, while I was still working, I got cast in a play with Al Pacino called The Basic Training of Pablo Hummel. And we opened that play in Boston the night The Godfather opened.
Oh.
So world media descended upon this little theater in Boston. And we ran that for about 3 months. Then I was hooked, and it was either back to New York or come out here. This was a better place to be poor when we got here in 1972. I think we came out with about $300 and a bag of slugs.
For the subway?
For anything, cigarettes, washing dryer machines. We lived on the north end of Boston, which is kind of mob connected. And as a going away present, they gave us a bag of slugs. We got through, you know?
That's like the scene in The Wild Bunch where they come back and they rob the bank and they go, you know, they got a bunch of slugs.
Yeah, right. Well, it saved us because we got robbed, I think, the first week we were here. Had our television stolen out of the car. We went to the beach and, like real saps, left a wallet under the blanket. That got stolen. So we relied on the slugs for a while. Yeah.
So let's talk about the Ballad of Gregorio Cortez. How did that evolve?
Well, I got invited to go to the very first year of the Sundance Institute Film Lab. I didn't know anything about it. I just had heard that Redford was involved, and it took place in the mountains just above Provo. There were 10 projects. Eddie Olmos had another project, and I met Robert M. Young, the director, and Michael Hausman, the producer. Also, Moctezuma Esparza, who produced with Redford Milagro Beanfield War, had this property called the Ballad of Gregorio Cortez, and he had $1.3 million to make the movie with. He didn't know what to do with it because he was busy with Milagro, and he gave it to Eddie to run with it, see what he could do with the money and the project.
And what is the story of Gregorio Cortez?
It's a story about a misinterpretation. Gregorio Cortez was suspected of stealing a horse, and Tim Scott, playing the sheriff, and I, being a very bad interpreter, go up to ask if he's stolen the horse.
Ask him if he's traded him a horse lately.
I misinterpret the word. He misunderstands what we're looking for.
They ain't gonna tell you nothing.
The argument gets heated. The sheriff jumps out of the wagon. The brother of Gregorio Cortez shoots him, and Gregorio shoots the sheriff. And what follows was the biggest manhunt in the history of Texas Rangers. 600 men chasing one guy on a horse for 11 days. He eluded them for that long before he was arrested.
And the story is a true story.
Absolutely true. It was documented. We had 40 pages of a script, so while we were shooting, we would write the rest of the script based on transcripts, court transcripts, newspaper reports, and the testimony of some of the descendants.
So it was a matter of misunderstanding.
In a country where all men are created equal,
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder without malice and assess 50 years confinement.
Gregorio Cortez was three things: the man, the legend, and the corridos, the ballad. So we took from all of those sources to create the story. The Academy is providing all the wherewithal and money to restore the film for release on DVD and cable. Brian Keith, when I was doing Hardcastle and McCormick, said Gregorio was his favorite Western of all time.
It's a great film.
It's an incredible film. Yeah, I heard that it had been shown on the Western Channel a couple of times, but I never knew when.
Boy, I usually record everything that I see on the Western Channel, and I missed that.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about a film series, Desperado.
Yeah.
And Tom, you were in really one of the best.
It was fantastic. What was his name?
His name was Alex MacArthur.
And in our episode, we had Richard Farnsworth, Brad Dourif, James Remar, Brian James, deceased, and Rex Lynn, a whole bunch of other people. But
Robert Knott, was he in that too?
Robert Knott, who wrote, produced Appaloosa, and now is Robert Parker, ghostwriter for Robert Parker's Westerns.
Right.
And he and Ed Harris have a whole bunch of projects that are on the cusp.
So Desperado, you were really a bad guy. You, you know, you're holding a woman, she gets shot, you're a bad guy.
For a long time, you know, I played those guys, and then you get too old, and so you slip into another category, lovable lunatic.
You're good at both.
So that's the new genre for me. I mean, the new category.
Desperado, where was that filmed?
We shot that in Tucson, I think. Yeah, in and around Tucson. For a time, I was doing so much work in Tucson, I was looking for a house before all the stuff went to Canada, you know. But great locations down there.
You did another little film that is certainly well reviewed, The Ballad of Little Jo.
Yep,
with
with
Susie
Bo.
Amos and Bo Hopkins in
Bo
that
Hopkins,
too.
yeah.
Another true story, and it seems like the true stories are the ones that are the small independent films that always get made. This was a woman who moved out west, and she had to disguise herself as a man to survive.
Yeah, just to get cross country.
How did you get cast in that?
The role was just offered to me, so I never knew the reason why, but Maggie Greenwald was the director, and I think the producers I had worked for on some other movies. The role was just given to me, and we shot it up in Montana at near Red Lodge. And they built a town like McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
Right.
They built the whole village. And we were there for about 10 weeks. Let's see, Heather Graham was in it, and Jimmy Woods was going with Heather at that time, so he'd come up and hang out, and Bo was always entertaining every night. And Susie Amos was the lead. Ian McKellen.
Oh, sure.
One of his first American movies. You know, we had seen him the night before as Richard III at UCLA. I get on a plane, and the following day I'm working with him in a Western. So, and he's done all right.
Oh, sure, he has.
Yeah.
And you did a Western pilot called Shaughnessy.
Yeah, Louis L'Amour.
Right.
Great people. The three people I hung out with the most was John Hawkes, who's having a
He's done all right,
career.
too.
He's fantastic.
From Deadwood, and I think an Oscar nomination, too.
John Carroll Lynch, who's doing very well. We got politically jammed with that because Len Hill, who had been an executive at ABC, left to do his own productions, and he was very successful. But about that time, all the networks decided to freeze out the independent producers. Everything had to be in-house.
It's only gotten worse today, whereas if you're going to the network and you pitch a show, they have to own it if they're going to greenlight it.
So as a result of that, CBS didn't pick up the series, you know, but it was really well done, and it does show up occasionally on the Western Channel.
Well, I know that you work with Ed Harris a lot.
Yeah.
And he's just a big Western fan.
And a good horseman.
Appaloosa.
Yeah. Appaloosa.
And the Riders of the Purple Sage was wonderful. You were in both those films.
Well, we ran a theater together, which Marty Kove is a part of, the M.E.T Theater. And Jimmy Gammon was the founder.
With Tim.
And Tim Scott. So it was a 35-year kind of partnership with the theater, which is still going loosely.
I know Ed directed Appaloosa.
Yeah. Well, he's a terrific director. He had already gotten broken in with Pollock, which took him 10 years to do. And Ed, once he got the rights to do, and the money to do Appaloosa, people were calling up begging to be a part of it, you know? I was getting calls from people's agents to see if they could be cast, but he got Viggo Mortensen, who's a great horseman, and Renee Zellweger, and Lance Hendrickson. We had a tremendous cast, and we shot it down near Santa Fe. The movie turned out great. Now, it didn't get a big theatrical release. I mean, it got a good release, but we kind of opened at a difficult time. But I can tell by my residuals that a ton of people are watching this movie.
Now, didn't Ed option the Robert Parker novels to do more?
Yeah, Ed owns the other two books, but Viggo's not interested in doing the same character again, because he's quite a Renaissance man.
Right.
He's
well, the horse that he rode in Hidalgo, he bought that horse.
Yeah. No, he's
a good hand.
He's a painter. He's a musician. He's a poet. He disappears for 2 years at a time. People don't know where he's at.
He's with Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah. He falls in love and makes a movie with his lover and brings it back, and nobody sees those movies either.
Well, those are just for his own personal collection, it sounds like to me.
Right.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about your role in one of the most popular and successful franchises around Die Hard 2, working with Bruce Willis.
Marvin the janitor.
Is that one of those funny character roles that you're talking about?
Yeah. Sort of a lovable lunatic. But there is so much that was shot that had to be cut for security reasons, because my character was living in the basement of Dulles Airport. And for security reasons, that just couldn't be. So I had more screen time than Bonnie Bedelia, and they felt that was over the line. So what they did with the current DVDs, they have a special section for Marvin. All the scenes that didn't make the movie.
Playing a lot of big band music, are you?
Yeah. But that section is pretty good.
That's worth going out to buy the DVD for.
That's right. More residuals.
Well, Tom, you are busy all the time, and I want to thank you for taking time to join us here today.
My pleasure.
Tom Bower, one of the greats.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Rob Word. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you had a good time. We did. And we'd have a better time if we knew you were a subscriber. If you left us a comment, tell us what you want to see, and we'll hope to bring it to you next time on A Word on Westerns.